everybody, welcome back to Slow Hand Guitar Shop. What you're looking at is a yard sale find, dirty and sweaty. My friend John purchased this a while ago, and it just sat in the gig bag that he purchased it in. He hasn't done a darn thing to it, and it's been played. It's what I like to call as form fresh, dusty. It's been played. It's got people's DNA on it. It needs to be cleaned. It needs a setup. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're not going to dive too deep into this and doing things like fret rocking. It seems to be in pretty good shape. I did use a fret rocker on it. There's a couple of spots not worth really going into because we're not really sure what John wants to do with this, other than set it up and maybe play it a little bit. But here's what it looks like. This is a Squier Stagemaster. Locking nut. You can see that the licensed by Floyd tremolo is actually recessed. It's sinking down in the body, so it needs to float. So I don't know if you can see how well you can see that, but it is down. These came in a few different colors. Everything is there. This color I would think is black, light black metallic or black metallic. It looks more of a gray, but I didn't see that they made any in gray. Needless to say, I did a little background check on these because John wasn't really sure. So the Stagemaster is a late 90s, early 2000s metal-focused guitar. 25.5 inch scale length, 24 fret neck, high output humbuckers, and licensed by Floyd locking tremolo. Other specs: solid alder or basswood body, maple. The neck is maple with rosewood fingerboard, 24 jumbo frets, which looks correct. Scale length 25.5. Pickups: dual humbuckers or HSH configurations. This is a dual humbucker with a 3-way switch. One master, one master volume, one master tone. 3-position blade switch. Headstock, small reverse, which you saw. Hardware is chrome, and the variations would be HSS, HSH. Features a single coil option. The Stagemaster Deluxe, which is a neck-through body, this is a bolt-on. And then they did make a Stagemaster 7-string with 24 frets and optional hardtail instead of the Floyd Rose. Common finishes were black metallic, cobalt blue metallic, and purple metallic. So that's what we're looking at. So this guitar, keeping in that modern vintage, late 90s, early 2000s, and I think on the other, yeah. So they were produced primarily between 1999 and 2000, but there are some earlier 90s variations. So this is basically your high-performance super strat from that was made in Korea or China. Let's see if this tells us where this was made. This is made in China. So basically a super strat designed for metal players, you know, for those that like, I can't stand Floyd's, I'll tell you right now, right out of the gate. So that's what this is about. So basically you're looking at what they would consider modern vintage guitar. Probably 99 or 2000, which makes it, 25 years old. Ish. First thing I'm going to do is let you know what I've done, which is really nothing. I went through and made sure like the switch was working. This volume knob basically just kind of pops right off. I checked the pots a little bit. They didn't seem scratchy. If you know anything about Floyd's, they can be fussy. However, when you have a process, these are not that difficult to set up. This felt like it had 9 gauges on it. This E string already popped out of the lock, but it feels like a 9. John wants to go to 8s. We're all getting a little older, and he wants to see what 8s will do. We're not going to go crazy with any kind of fretwork. I checked some frets already with a fret rocker. There's really not much of anything going on there. I also checked relief. I'm going to check it again because now this guitar has been sitting for a little bit. So I'm using the notch straight edge, and this is This is pretty flat. I think by going to 8, I don't know, I may have to make an adjustment with the truss rod later, but this is already pitched back. I think there's 9s on it. You can see this float. This is floating below the surface of the body. See that? It should be somewhere right about there. So I don't think putting 8s on it is going to gain any tension. So we're going to do a couple of things first. And my very first thing is I want to check the output on these pickups with a meter. And we'll take it from there. So make sure our lead is in. And we'll turn on our meter, set it to 20K. And we'll test. This is a 3-way switch, so you're on, split, on. So we'll check the neck pickup first. And we are at 1166. Oh, it's jumping a little bit. In the middle, we get a little over 6. And then the neck pickup, about 1177. So the neck one is a little bit hotter. I'm sorry. The bridge is a little bit hotter than the neck. What did I just do there? So output is okay. And we're going to do a lot of things with this, mostly clean it up. There's, like I said, a lot of finger jam, a lot of somebody else's DNA on this. I think this is going to look really nice. I really liked what I could see under the dirt. But that's really all we're going to do. We're going to give it some love. We're going to clean it up, restring it, reset the float on the bridge. We're going to polish the frets, so he's got some nice polished frets to start his journey with this. But the first thing we're going to do is remove back plate. I'm removing this because I feel like there's going to be a claw adjustment in my future. I've also, I gave all the locks and everything on the tremolo a small shot of lightweight oil because they were looking a little rusty. So this looks like 3 springs. It looks like our ground is good in here. Everything looks to be okay in here. Let's make sure that screw for our tremolo is all right. Seems a little loose, but let's take a look. See if there's something going on down in there. Doesn't seem to be. So that's okay. Then we're going to take the cover off of the electronics and we're going to give our pots a little shot. I ran out of deoxit, so I'm going to go with the next best and give it a shot with some QD contact cleaner. Here's my pick. So basically what happened was, because like I said, it's so damn cold, I put together a little toolkit and set this up in a little spare room on a folding table just to get this done. And inside, all of our electronics are really good. 500K, 500K. We've got a couple of, I mean, this looks really nice wiring. Even the inside of the route looks really clean. Look how clean that is in there. It's pretty nice. You know, I've always been a fan of Squiers, other than like the later Squier Affinities that were made in like Indonesia, things like that. They were kind of trashy. For me to feel like they have the Squier name. Squiers were always one of my first guitars was a Squier too, like a late 70s, early 80s Stratocaster style. Very nice guitar. But these look great. I can't get over how clean that is. And even all the electronics, it's just a clean cavity. You know, you would think there would be some of that compound, dried compound in there from buffing it. Pretty sweet. So again, Squiers were always, I always liked Squiers. I even liked Epiphones. What I really liked about Squier was the affordability. One, they were decent instruments, and they always kept the headstock legit like a Strat. Unlike Epiphone, where they tried to make those headstocks look different, which now they're finally catching on to with the Inspired by Gibson line and creating them with the open book headstock. So let's get a little spurts in here and little spurts in here, which is probably not necessary considering how clean this is. It's really amazing. I'm really impressed by that. We'll put this one back on. We're going to leave the back cover off. So our inspection is done for the electronics. So yeah, basically whenever something like this comes through the door, that's really what we're doing. We're really inspecting this because, like I said, John has not played this yet. And really not sure where this is going to land. This is going to be something that he keeps. He may keep it now, knowing its age. While we're here, we'll just make sure that these screws for the neck are not loose. There's a little bit of a turn there. A little bit of a turn there. Maybe an eighth quarter of a turn. All right. So if you know how fussy these can be when you're intonating, these bridge saddles have to go forward or backward depending on whether you're sharp or flat. So while there's strings on it, I'm going to get an idea, even though this the bridge is floating below the surface. I just want to get an idea because it's going to make it easier for me. I might be able to make an adjustment on these saddles while the strings are off, put them in a position, and then when I have everything strung up and strings are stretched and ready to do the final intonation, I may not have to make such large moves, if any moves at all. So, E was tuned right, and that seems right on, although it's does seem to be a little buzz there. It's actually a little bit flat. So if you use a process called what they call following the needle or chase the needle, so we're almost right on there, right? On an open E. On the fretted E, as soon as this settles down, they're about the same. And I'm going to follow that process. So there's our A, open A, it's a hair out, right? It's a little low, could be a little flat, looks a touch flat. But again, there's not full tension on this. This isn't floating correctly. Let's do the D, let's give it the D. D's a hair flat as an open string. That's actually pretty close. It might have been a pretty decent last setup that this had. There's G. Open. A little flat. So the chase the needle thing, if this is a little flat, let's just say, right, it's a little below zero. The needle is below zero, left. If you place this on the guitar and you looked, said, well, it's flat, then that saddle is going to go left. The same way the needle is the same way the saddle is going to go. If you're sharp, that means your needle has gone past your point, you're going to chase that way. If it's below 0, you're going to chase that way. So I think what I'm going to do on this G string is I'm going to flatten it a little bit once the strings are off. And then the B string, seems to be right on, maybe a little flat there too. So what I'm going to do is once I get the strings off, I'm going to open up these two saddles for the B, G, and the B. I don't know what the E is because there's no E string on there because it was unlocked. I'm going to take these two saddles for the G and the B string, and I'm going to push them a little bit that way and see how that works out. So, next step, really would like to clean this thing. I would really, because it's kind of gunky. I think I'll see if I can find a couple of, I think I have two black tone knobs, 2 black volume knobs. I'll replace those and give these back to John as the originals. The other thing you're going to need to know, maybe I don't clean it. You know what? Let's give it a quick clean. And I'm going to use something that most people probably wouldn't. But considering that this guitar has a poly finish on it, I keep kicking this thing. Sorry. Jeez, I'm clumsy today. I'm just going to use, just to get a little DNA off of this, not to do a complete cleanup. I'm just going to use a disinfectant wipe. Use your brand of choice. It's not going to hurt anything on a guitar like this with a poly finish. You may not want to use it on something with a nitro or lacquer finish. But I just got to get the schmutz off because, not that I feel gross, but I kind of feel gross. So, yeah, you can see that's kind of schmutzy. I'm going to get inside the Floyd as well. There's a lot of dust in there and stuff. Who knows what. So, you know, this guitar is really a good example of the stuff that I like to get my hands on when I can. Maybe not even so much to hold on to it or collect it, but it's a quality guitar. It's built very well. A lot of people stick their nose in the air. It's a Squier, it's a Squier. Well, yeah, there were some bad Squiers, just like there's some bad legitimate manufacturing flaws in some of what happened during like the 70s Norland era of Gibson, or who knows. There's just, you know, the internet is full of the stories, full of the snobbery as well. You know what? Play what you like. Play what you can afford. Stop being such a grumpy prick, or enter your terminology for some of these snobs that got their noses in the air about things. You know, people have budgets, people have taste. Some people don't have taste, but they have certain tastes. Like I just said, the only thing I never liked about Epiphone was their headstock choice. I like an open book headstock. I didn't care that it said Epiphone on the top of my headstock, which I don't know why anybody would. Still a quality instrument. I mean, it doesn't say Gibson. Whoop-de-doo. But, you know, even getting into the Gibson thing, people buy what they can afford. Some people are buying them, and I'm no stranger to that. Hot rodding some of those guitars because they're cheap, and you can have some fun with them, and you can turn them into a really nice player guitar. Player grade guitar for little bucks. So, that said, I've already released the nuts, the locking nut, and I think where I'm going to go is, I don't know if this is pro tip or just geek tip. They make these things called trem blocks. So when you're changing strings on these, you can slide something under here to keep the bridge in the upright position, right? Makes it easier for getting your strings on, blah, blah, blah. if you don't want to break the bank, buy this special tool or make a special tool. Go to Harbor Freight and pick up a package of these 3-piece spreaders for body work, and take the largest one out of the bag, and you can see there's a little bit of a bevel on these, and it's your choice. You can stick the bevel side in or you can stick the thicker side in, but these have a little bit of give, so you're not going to get this huge flex. You're also not going to scratch the body because these are made of some sort of, I don't know, feels like some sort of vinyl, but it keeps the bridge up, and you can see now the bridge is actually floating above the body, and I'm not damaging the guitar. It kind of looks like a piece of American cheese squozed in there. And again, you can use either side you wish. This is a little more sturdy because it doesn't have the bevel in it. This is thinner plastic down here. Okay, so you've got options, is what I'm saying. I took the strings off camera. You didn't need to see that. You know how to take strings off. But my next step is really some more cleaning kind of things. There's dust and schmutz and stuff in here, so I just use like a regular chip brush to get the heavies off initially. I try and, oh, and I also noticed that this pickup, this bridge pickup was a little high. It seemed like it was really close to the strings. So at the end, we'll take care of that too. So I'm just going to get in here with some of this to clean the heavy dust and stuff that's on there. We're also going to do it up here on the headstock. While I'm here, I'm going to check tuning keys and see if they're locked. See, this one's really loose. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see, this one here. You can hear it. This one's loose too. So while I'm here, I think I mentioned this tool in the first video. This has a 10mm built onto the handle. This is by Music Nomad. So while I'm here, and this is just standard stuff. Pretty good, pretty good. There you go. These are all the steps that you need to go through. These are just the press on or pull in. These do not have any screws in the back. So only the nut tension keeps those in. So now that those are in good shape, let's get a rag. Just clean in a little bit to get the heavy dust off. We'll go back with some polish or something at some point when we're getting ready to button this all up. The other thing I want to do is I want to clean the fretboard jam. I don't know if that's gouges in here. It's kind of what it feels like right there on the 2nd fret. But there's definitely DNA in here. So the ultimate DNA remover is our good old friend acetone, aka lighter fluid. So we'll get a little bit of that on this microfiber cloth and do some DNA removal. This one isn't terribly bad, but there's definitely some stuff on there. And because this hasn't been, I really don't know how long John has had it. Definitely needs a fret condition. So I'm going to do a quick one of those before I do the fret polishing. The frets don't look bad. I examined them. There's probably a crowning in their near future. I mean, that's not terrible, right? That's just gunk. Let me get some of that in here too. But considering, like I said, John hasn't done any real playing of this guitar, our initial mission is to get this playing, strung with 8s to see how he likes it. He may not be a fan of 8s. He may want to go back to 9s. He might want to go to 10s. So when he makes up his mind what he's going to do, he might turn around and flip the guitar the way it is. Who knows? And John, just so you know, if you ever think about doing that, I might be a buyer. I really like this guitar. Anyhow, we're going to use the Ernie Ball fretboard conditioner as the initial condition. You can see that after taking the dirt off, how this lightened up so much. It's very dry. It's starting a couple of spots where you can feel like there might be some fret sprout starting to happen. Again, not our objective today. So we'll wipe on some of this conditioner. Normally you wouldn't let it sit very long. You don't want it to saturate the wood or the fretboard. But in this case, while I'm there waiting for that to soak, I'm going to, again, knowing that this was not floating properly, it was below the surface, while that stuff is soaking in on the fretboard, I'm going to, first I gotta find, let me use this screwdriver first. Let's see. The other one, yeah, but that's not the right one. So, knowing that it was sunk in, it was floating below the body, that means you've got to decrease the tension on these springs. So I'm not going to give it a virtuous twist back. Again, we're going to put 8s on this when I think 9s were already on there. I'm going to loosen this a little bit, maybe 4 turns. So that was 2 there, 3, 4. And we're going to see what that does. If need be, obviously, turn it over again, make the adjustment. Going to make sure our strings are stretched. You got to do all that stuff. It's just the way these things operate. They're not terrible. I owned a Kramer back in the late 90s, hot pink with the Floyd. It was a HSH configuration. It's a nice guitar, but I didn't have the know-how at the time, and I really didn't have the patience, you know. And I always let my local guitar shop set it up for me. There's some dark areas on this neck too. I don't know if that's dirt or what, but we're gonna see. Yeah, I think that's just the way the wood is aged. Maybe there's some oils from people's hands and fingers have gotten in there. And while we're there, we're also going to check the caps on these tuners. That one's a little loose. That one is a little loose. Get my Music Nomad tool with the screwdriver. Give that a little tightening. That one could use a little tightening too. All of the plastic bushings look good in here. Looks like one of them might have been replaced. It's a different color. But these look good. They're not grinding. All right. So that's good. I'm going to turn this back over. All right. So I'm going to use my little fret guard here, so I don't put any sideways marks with my fret eraser as I'm doing this. And these are readily available. You can find these all over the place. I'm going to use a couple of different fret grit or grits on this. I'm going to start with a 400 grit just work my way down. Hello. Lather, rinse, repeat. Again, these don't look too terrible. So they may not need, there's not any heavy scratching or pinning or anything in there. So while this guitar was definitely played, doesn't look like the person who used it abused it. I can see some of that conditioner starting to dry in a little more. We're getting some of those light areas again. That's okay, because we're going to give it another final condition when we're done. And I don't have my narrow fret gauge here, so I'm going to do this by hand. If I have to clean anything up, I'll clean it up after. All right, so first pass. Now I'm going to go down a couple of more, or up a couple of more grits of fret eraser, and then tape it off, get it ready for polish. Be right back. All right, strings are off. As you saw, we got all of our grits with the fret eraser done, and now Blue Magic Middle Polish Cream. Oh, this needs a shake. So I ran out of my super thin tape, so these last 4 frets I'm gonna have to do without getting a lot of this Blue Magic all over the place. So this is what the Blue Magic looks like. You know what? Let's use a new one that doesn't have any of that Roncinol on it or any of the fretboard conditioner. A little dab will do you. Just dab it in. And as I stated in my previous video, doing this by hand is just the way I've always done it. I never like having a Dremel or some sort of cordless tool, or even a big buffing wheel with the, and pushing the guitar against the buffing wheel. I don't like things spinning around that could possibly fly off, or a thing falls out of my hand while I'm using it and do any damage to the guitar itself. So it's not about speed for me, because this is not it's not my line of work. This is my side line of work, and I don't take on too much work at a time. I like to be able to work at my own speed, return the product or the instrument back to the customer in a timely fashion, so I don't fill myself up or back myself up with too much work. So doing this by hand isn't really a big deal for me. Let's see what we got going on here. Nice. This is one fret that has a little dinger in it, but it's not anything that I think would affect playability, but something we can address when John decides which direction he wants to go. If he's keeping this guitar, if he needs to go back to 9-gauge strings, something like that. And they look pretty good. There's a couple of spots where you can see whoever played it in certain areas. Nothing too flat, but nothing again, nothing that I think is going to affect playability for John. So next step, I'm going to get this tape off. We're going to get strings back on this and see if we have to fight with it. So we get the tape off and I'll get the strings ready. We'll be back. Okay, so what I like to do with these before I get started really stringing, I like to check under here where your locks go. Just make sure there's nothing under there. Make sure it's clean. There's no debris, anything that could be causing a problem. The other thing I do is just make sure that these are snug. And that's pretty nice. The other thing is I take all the string posts and I make sure all of the holes are facing this way. So I already kind of started that. Give them a couple of turns. So they're all facing towards the nut. And then we put our these back on. Oh, that's interesting. Seem to be anything wrong with that. It's just me. It's just me. There we go. I think. Yeah. There we go. Let's see what these look like. Maybe this was, I think this was reversed. I think this is the first one. Yeah, this was the last one. This generally doesn't matter, but in this case, oh, good catch. There we go. All right, so these are started. I already cut the first string and set it in down here. Now we'll pass it under here. Yeah, pass it under here. There we go. Whoops. You know, this is hard to do with one hand. Let's make sure that's being fussy now. All right, hold on a second. So there's a few ways to do this. Actually, there's really not a few. There's maybe two. Some guys like to take their string and run it from the peg head end with the ball still on the end of the string and keep the ball as the tension point and then do their winds. I hate that. I think it looks stupid. So I do this the conventional way. I snip the ball end off and I take a little bit and I use a pair of needle nose and I just go in on the tip about a little less than 1/4 of an inch. I don't know if you can see that in there. Just put the string in there about 1/4 of an inch and then just bend it, not completely 90 degrees, but a bit. So you get that. And then I put that in the trim block. And tighten her up. It's easy as that. The hard part about this is knowing just how much tension you really want to crank down on these, because you can maybe on on the treble strings, you could put enough tension on it to maybe split the string or bust the string, so to speak. And this is lather, rinse, repeat too. You want to make sure that you're in the slot of the saddle when you're doing this. You want to make sure that the string rests right in the slot. There's little slots in here. You want to make sure that they get through there and sit right. And then through the end, pull it back about an inch or so. Put a kinker in there. Make sure it does not slip out. And don't make sure your tool doesn't fall apart either. Oh boy. So much fun. I don't know why that doesn't stay in there. Again, you want to make sure your winds go down. And there you go. So let me do this a few more times and we'll come back and start dealing with this. While I'm here, like I said, the G and the B string they seemed a little flat. So flat, that means the needle was to the left, right? If you're looking at it, the needle is to the left. If you turn it this way, the needle's to the left. It's the same way your saddle's gotta go. So, E-A-D, G, I'm gonna loosen the G saddle, and I'm gonna move it a little bit, because at the beginning of this video, it seemed to me that it was a little flat. And the same with the B string. So, let's loosen that. Ooh, there we go, just a little bit. We'll see what we come out with at the end. So let me string this up and we'll start tuning the pitch. Be right back. Okay, strings are on. I've taken the fine tuners and found a spot that's about halfway between full out and full down because we want to have some fluctuation there in case John needs to make a fine tune while he's playing. Saddles are good. Everything is in great shape. So now I'm doing my pre-stretch where I take my thumbs and fingers this way, just pre-stretching. I already checked the float of the bridge. It doesn't look like, even once this is tuned to pitch, it's going to bring it back up to the body level. But we'll make an adjustment there. And then we'll check our intonation lastly. So, let's get this to pitch. That was pretty close. Okay. Guess I cranked on that one pretty good. Okay. Go to D. I know some of you are going, why are you using that outdated tuner? Well, because it hasn't failed me in 30 years, that's why. right on first shot. Sometimes yours work pretty good. That was almost close too. Alright, so that is pitch, sort of, stretch. And I can see this is really going to need an adjustment. So let's back this out. So we see what we want to see. Wow, that screw is in there. That's crazy. That screw was probably turned in and then left alone for 25 years and just sat there. That's amazing. All right, let's see what we get now. If you're doing this and you hear buzzing, it's because the locks haven't been set down yet, so they're rattling inside the nut. Getting closer, getting closer. So you may have to do this a couple of times, depending, like this, like I said. It looks like there were 9s on this guitar, and it still wasn't, the bridge still wasn't floating at the body level. We're going down to 8s, so it's 8 to 38, I think. Something like that. So I'm going to take even more tension off the springs to get this to float. So this is the tough part when you're stretching strings and really trying to get your bridge to float at the same time. Using a different gauge takes patience, and ultimately, that's really it. Ultimately, it's patience. So let's go back, try again. That looks way better. Way better. Just trying to get close. It's my first level of business. That looks pretty good. I like that right there. It's just a little bit forward, a touch. We might get some more stretch out of these strings. And then we're going to do intonation. Okay. The old stretch routine. I'm sorry this is the longest part of this video, but this is the most technical end of this, if you want to call it technical. This really has to be done a certain way. And sometimes you got to split hairs. You know, you might think you're good, and then you got to go back and do it again. That's all right. I think it's come up a little bit more than I would like. So this is what I'm talking about. So let's pitch these down a little. Just a quarter of a turn. And let's crank this down about a full turn, maybe 3/4 of a turn. And then tune back to pitch. Now that I like. Now we're really cooking with Crisco, and I'm sorry I just kicked the camera again. So now, if you can see, we've got a better float. All right, intonation time. So let's go back to E. Make sure she's tuned. That's right on. Whoever set it up the last time must have had it in a really good spot. Pretty impressed. It's a little sharp. At least it seems a little sharp. Not much, but a touch sharp on the D. G is on. That was one of the ones I moved before I strung it. So I was right there. Spot on. So those two adjustments I made to the saddles before stringing it, because I tested it while the strings were on it before I cut them all off. I made the right decision, so that was good. It saved me the trouble, although I will have to go and do, I think the D string is a little sharp. E is right on. So let's see. I'm sure this is going to have some broken in. Wow, I've never played 8s before. Somebody went out. Why did you do that to me? Why did you do that to me? G. Check that D again. All right, let's see. D is sharp. So sharp means it went forward. If you turn this way, it went forward, right? So lay it on the guitar. The way that the needle goes, that's the way you got to push the string saddle. So we'll loosen the D to get enough slack so I can get where did it go? I know I moved the tools so I wouldn't scratch anything, but where did they go? Very important to keep track of your stuff, boys and girls, because it's very easy to do stupid things like this. Not in my pocket. Here they are. So you're going to need your 2.5 mil. And you're going to pull your D away so you can access the Allen key. And then we want to go sharp. We got to push it that way. So this is under string tension. So you're going to take a screwdriver or some other device to hold that saddle while you loosen and give it a push as much as you can, and then tighten it. Resting it against the pick guard or the pick, the pickup cover. All right, let's see if that made a difference. Spot on. Like to see that. So let's make sure we got a little, somebody went out again, probably the bee again. Let's give it another stretch and another retune. I'll do that off camera and I'll let you take a look at this when I'm done. Be right back. She's tuned. She's a hair higher on floating on the body. It's, I mean, literally maybe a millimeter, and I'm not concerned about that, and I don't think John will be concerned about that either. Last thing I'm going to do is check this relief again, just because, and that doesn't look like it changed at all. I thought with the 8s on, it might have put a little bit of relief in, or a back bow in it, but it didn't. So everything's good. All that needs to be done now is one more fretboard condition, maybe a little fine tune, because these strings are going to stretch. So, again, this took a little bit longer than it probably should have, because we're going from a different string gauge. It was already pitched back underneath the body line. So you got to play with that, and you have to be patient. So, for all intents and purposes, this guitar is ready to go back to my buddy John. I'm going to give this another little condition with some polish. We're going to put our cover back on the back. That was a little scuzzy looking. And call this edition done for this Squier Stagemaster, which pretty nice little instrument. And I thank you all for tuning in and seeing how I adjust these Floyds. They can be a real bear. This one wasn't bad, considering I knew what we had to go through and what we were changing. Again, string gauges, and that was already set below the body of the guitar. So overall, a successful new setup for this guitar. And John will play it and let me know what he thinks and what his plans are going to be for this guitar. Tell me I lost the screw. Go ahead and tell me I lost the screw. I lost the screw. That's okay. It's here somewhere. John will give me his plans for this little beast, and he'll move on to the next thing, because he's got a few more for me, and I've got several that are waiting that I haven't touched yet. So thanks for tuning in. Hey, listen, go out and buy a Squier. If you see one, that's like this is like a special edition kind of thing. This has a real low profile neck. This is a Speed Demon neck. If you're that guy and you're looking for that first guitar, go see if you can find one of these used somewhere and learn how to do the setup on it. It's not terrible, and they need some love. I'm sure this thing sounds pretty good. I plug it in, but I don't have an amp up here, and I'm not gonna go down in the basement. So a little fret polish is going to need another little condition, but go out and pick one of these up. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a Squier. You need to play, and you need to buy what you love. You need to play what you love. You need to not listen to these folks that just constantly poo-poo on everything that's out there. This guitar is going to service John absolutely fine. I bet you there's a gigging musician who would probably play this. Once it's finally, locked in, John's probably going to have to make some minor adjustments to the fine tuners as he's playing it, because I don't think these strings are stretched all the way. And they're 8s. I've never dealt with 8s, and I don't think he's ever dealt with 8s either. But listen, a little bit of elbow grease, a very small investment. He got this with a gig bag. You know, you want to get a case for it, then there's a little bit more of an investment. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with these. Even this isn't a legit Floyd. It's licensed by Floyd. Absolutely nothing wrong with this guitar. Don't listen to the, don't listen to the big mouths. Always got their nose up in the air, telling you what you should and shouldn't buy. I found my screw, and what they think is better than something, and you shouldn't own that guitar because, you can't play, all those kind of things. So thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of this little garage sale, farm fresh Squier Stagemaster. Hope you're all doing well. See you guys in the next video.